Maybe I've just been looking in the wrong places, but I've seen a lot of people writing off the Timberwolves in this first round series against the Memphis Grizzlies. But the Timberwolves just took game one in pretty impressive fashion, and they actually showed a lot of promise in being able to slow down the Grizzlies' fast-paced offense and relegate them to playing the game at their pace instead of letting them get out and run in transition. In this video, I'm going to go over how the Timberwolves can beat the Memphis Grizzlies in this series and showcasing what they did in game one that allowed them to put up so many points and stave off the Memphis Grizzlies offense. As always, be sure to subscribe if you enjoy the video. Let's get right into it. Now, one guy I have to shout out right off the bat is Anthony Edwards, and not just for his offensive masterclass, but also for the intensity that he showed on the defensive end, making life as difficult as possible for Ja Morant and playing a key role in slowing them down. He played some really strong defense against Ja, a guy who has spent the entire regular season showing that he's able to get his points pretty much whenever he wants to. Edwards has definitely shown a significant amount of improvement this season on the defensive end, but this game really gave us a glimpse into the potential that Anthony Edwards has as a defender when he's putting in maximum effort and making smart decisions. You see, Morant is at his best when he's able to get downhill to the basket, using his impressive athleticism and crafty midair adjustments to get shots at the rim to fall. Anthony Edwards wasn't allowing him to do that. On this play, he provides some really great help against Morant on a drive to the basket, and he even goes as far as securing the block. Here, he's guarding Morant one-on-one, and when Ja initiates the drive, he does a fantastic job of moving laterally and not allowing him to get by, forcing him into a difficult situation at the rim, and he ultimately forces a miss. I also want to talk about how the Timberwolves forced Desmond Bane, one of the NBA's best shooters, into having a really rough shooting night. I loved the adjustment that they made late in the game to have Jaden McDaniels on him. McDaniels has shown really high upside as a perimeter defender, and he was paramount in forcing Desmond Bane into some really bad shots. You can see that he wouldn't allow Bane to get clean looks from beyond the arc. Instead, he forced him inside and made him go for contested mid-range shots or go to the basket. McDaniels is just so lengthy and quick when moving laterally that it made life a living hell for Bane when he had McDaniels guarding him. And while we're on the subject of Jaden McDaniels, he's really going to be a major X factor for them, not just defensively, but also offensively. He only missed one shot the entire night in game one, but otherwise he was hitting everything. A lot of his points came from hustle plays and smart positioning to open up a pass for whoever has the ball, and if he's able to do that on a consistent basis throughout this entire series, he's going to be a big factor in the Timberwolves offense continuing to fire on all cylinders, even when other guys may end up having bad shooting nights. Now, a big thing to watch is when the Grizzlies opt to go for a small ball lineup with Jaren Jackson Jr. at the 5 alongside Brandon Clark. It's a pretty significant advantage that they have in most matchups against most teams in these playoffs. The Timberwolves showed that they have a secret weapon that they can use to mitigate some of that advantage, and that secret weapon is Jared Vanderbilt. When he was matched up against Jaren Jackson Jr., he played some stellar defense, and with him being such an incredible rebounder, he actually creates a bit of an advantage when the Grizzlies go small, due to Jaren Jackson Jr. not exactly being one of the best rebounding bigs in the world. Vando gets a lot of Dennis Rodman comparisons, and it's for good reason. He was chasing the heck out of the glass and working hard to out-rebound Steven Adams and Brandon Clark. He was following every shot and muscling his way inside to secure rebounds, even though it was oftentimes against bigger guys. I've harped on it all season, but D'Angelo Russell's playmaking continues to speak for itself as to why he's one of the very best playmakers in the entire league. He struggled scoring the ball in game one, but it really didn't matter. He's able to contribute to the offense through his playmaking that helps negate the negative impact that an off-shooting night might have on their ability to win a game. He orchestrated some really interesting plays that resulted in clean looks. Let's take a look at this one. Cat and McDaniels are going to come up to the top of the key as if they're preparing to run a Spain pick and roll. Cat ends up not rolling, and McDaniels sets a screen on Clark, and the result is all sorts of confusion for the defense. Kyle Anderson has to completely forget about McDaniels, instead going to provide help on the drive by D'Lo, and Clark is left alone up top with both Cat and McDaniels, and D'Lo takes advantage of this and passes to McDaniels for an easy 3 points. D'Lo took advantage of the Grizzlies playing some really undisciplined defense too. You can see here when D'Lo and Vando go into this pick and roll, Jaren Jackson Jr. and Dillon Brooks both come to help, although Brooks ends up completely ignoring Anthony Edwards in the corner. The result is about one of the easiest corner threes that Anthony Edwards could have possibly asked for. Now, the Grizzlies are a very good defensive team, but they're also young. With youth, there can sometimes come a lack of discipline, particularly on the defensive end. One of the biggest keys for the Timberwolves is going to be capitalizing on the times where the Grizzlies are playing that undisciplined defense and making the most of those opportunities. Perhaps the biggest key to the Timberwolves having a good shot at winning the series is going to hinge heavily on how dominant Cat is able to be as a scorer. I loved how aggressively he was attacking Steven Adams. Putting Adams on Cat was an interesting decision instead of running Jaren Jackson Jr. on him, and Cat did a great job of showing why that was a terrible idea. He was being aggressive but not reckless, which I think is a really important distinction, especially when it comes to Cat, because sometimes I think his aggressiveness can sometimes result in offensive fouls and turnovers because he can be a bit careless at times. But he wasn't trying to get the ball in the high post or above the break and trying to back people down like he did during that Clippers game, which clearly didn't work. He was cutting away from the ball, taking threes that he knew he could hit, and blowing by Steven Adams to get good looks. They did try throwing Brandon Clark at him, but with the Grizzlies switching on pick and rolls, it really didn't matter because he'd often get a mismatch against a smaller player and be able to take advantage of it. Really, there's a few things they did that set him up for a big night. He spent the first half guarded by Steven Adams, which I don't have to explain to you why that was a bad idea. The Grizzlies were switching pick and rolls, so even when putting better defenders on Cat, the Timberwolves would just hunt for a mismatch. In situations where they should have been switching pick and rolls, nobody would, and he would get some really easy cuts to the basket. Brooks did a lot of doubling on pick and roll ball handlers, and it often just left Cat completely unguarded on the perimeter, and he was able to use that to either put up a shot or just drive to the basket. There were a couple times they ran a lineup with Steven Adams as the only big man on the floor, and it once again allowed Cat to get pretty much whatever he wanted. Now, all of this is great news, but don't be surprised if we see Taylor Jenkins throw Jaren Jackson Jr. on him for the majority of the game in Game 2. I'd also imagine they're going to cool it on switches when he's screening in the pick and roll because they really don't have a lot of versatility outside of Jaren Jackson Jr. and Brandon Clark to put up much of a fight if they switch everything. So what should they do if Cat does end up with Jaren Jackson Jr. on him more often in Game 2? In Game 1, Cat was able to just get the ball pretty much wherever he wanted on the court, and he was still able to be pretty effective regardless. But if he has someone like Jaren Jackson Jr. on him who can shut down his drives, he needs to focus more on working off ball or making plays to cutting teammates. Now, this is a double-edged sword because this also requires his teammates to be working off ball and cutting to the basket for him to find them. Perhaps one of the biggest factors that helped the Wolves win Game 1 against the Grizzlies was Anthony Edwards' fantastic play. While he did shoot exceptionally well, there were a few things that played a role in his ability to put up big scoring numbers and shoot the ball efficiently. They ran Steven Adams in drop coverage against him on pick and rolls, and as much as I hate that I'm kind of ragging on Steven Adams' defense in this video, he was just not put into a position to succeed, and Edwards was able to feast whenever he had Adams in drop. Really, any time he had Adams on him, he took advantage of him. Despite Adams trying his best, he's just not quick enough to be able to be switchable against guards and guys that are capable of creating their own shots. If I'm being completely honest, Steven Adams is probably going to get taken out of this series simply because he's not versatile enough of a defender to slow down the Minnesota Timberwolves' 3 offensive threats. Anthony Edwards wasn't settling for the first shot that he got either, something I really enjoyed seeing from him. He had several opportunities where he could have opted for an easy catch and shoot shot, but instead he was getting defenders to bite on his pump fakes and attacking the basket and finishing at the rim. Anthony Edwards is a great finisher, but he's at his best when he's keeping defenses guessing and offering a good blend of self-creation on the perimeter and aggressive plays to the basket. He found a really nice balance in Game 1, and while he definitely had a good shooting night even on the difficult contested shots, he dismantled the entire game plan that the Grizzlies employed against him. Their shooting as a team was pretty much as good as you could ask. Malik Beasley popping off for 23 points was no doubt incredibly beneficial, but they shouldn't rely on that for the entire series. He's always been a bit of a streaky shooter, so while it's great that he was able to have a big night, they'll either need D'Lo to be able to have a 20-plus point night, or get contributions from other guys on the roster if they want to have as much success on the offensive end as they did in game 1. Now, it's just one game, so you can't put a crazy amount of stock into anything we've seen, but the evidence is there for the Timberwolves in this series. Taylor Jenkins is going to make adjustments, and it's on the Timberwolves to figure out how they can take advantage of those adjustments. Fortunately, they have Chris Finch on their side, and I don't need to remind you how good of a coach Chris Finch is. They have the talent to hang with the Grizzlies, and at this point, it's more about the chess match of the series, more so than it is having the star power to remain competitive against a team like Memphis. But taking game 1 on the road is by far the best way to start the series, and I truly believe they're capable of winning if they continue to operate like they did. So who do you see winning the series and in how many games? Be sure to let me know in the comments below, and as always, if you enjoyed the video, be sure to leave a like and subscribe. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.